Recently, I played 6 hours of Elden Ring Nightreign, and we were locked in for that entire time. This game is addictive, it's intense, it's way faster paced than I expected, and I think it's gonna be a hit. So let's talk about it. Our characters have just left the round table hold, and day 1 is about to begin. Your goal in Nightreign is to survive each day as a ring of rain closes in around you and your team. Then, at the start of day 3, you'll fight one of 8 major bosses using all of the randomized loot and buffs that you've accumulated over the course of your run. Now, every session you play in Nightreign is supposed to be somewhat unpredictable. You won't always explore the same map, or receive the same loot, or face the same enemies. The one thing, though, that I found very predictable in every single one of my Nightreign sessions was this feeling of pressure. The pressure not just to survive, but the pressure to get stronger. Because if you don't get powerful fast, there's no way you'll defeat the final boss. You can kind of see that pressure in action here. These characters just rested at a grace and leveled up and ran, because the rain is coming, and you don't have much time. In our playthrough session, we would have to make these split-second decisions about where to go and what to do, and most importantly, whether we had the time to do it. So often it was a choice between defeating a boss and claiming its loot, or running away and living to fight another day. So many subtle changes have been made to the mechanics of Elden Ring as well, and all of these changes have been made in the name of speed and efficiency. For example, you can now vault easily over objects and even enemies as well to get where you need to go. Gone are the days where you need torrent to traverse the map. Now you can press L3 to activate a powerful sprint, and you can also activate spirit springs on foot, which vault you so high up into the air. Also, there's no fall damage in Nightreign, so from high places it's easy to justify jumping down and getting to where you need to be. Let's talk about the different classes, the different Nightfarers that you can choose to play in this game. This is the Recluse, a mage character that, like other characters, has an ability and an ultimate that you can use. They've turned the HUD off for the footage that they've given us, but I remember what these abilities and skills looked like, so I've drawn them, and this is where they are usually on screen. Your activated ability is on the left, and your ultimate is on the right. Both of these circles fill up over time, and when they're full, that's when you can use the ability or the ultimate. Now, the Recluse has an ability that is actually much more complicated than the other characters' abilities, and I think they designed it this way because the Recluse is designed to be a backline character. In Nightreign, the spells you cast are tied to the weapons you pick up. So you usually only have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 spells on hand, so From Software has given mages another system to sort of micromanage while they're standing in the backline casting spells. Let me explain really quickly how it works. Basically, whenever an enemy or a teammate gets tagged by a certain type of damage, like fire or magic or holy, a little marker will appear on them, and then the Recluse can absorb that type of energy, getting a little bit of mana, but more importantly, filling out one of these small orbs. Then, when you've acquired 3 elements, you can unleash the Recluse's ability, generating a unique spell based on the combination of elements you've acquired. So, a huge part of this character's skill expression is going to be understanding intuitively what these different combinations of spell are, and whether you're in the right position to cast them. And this is just this character's ability. They obviously have an ultimate as well, and this one is more straightforward. Basically, after a short delay, you can mark nearby enemies with this red tag, and once marked, if anyone on your team hits them, they will regain health and mana, which is incredible for the sustained health of your party. Now, when you cast an ultimate from any character, your character actually becomes invincible while they're casting it, which in the case of the Recluse is especially handy, as you can see in this footage where they use it to sort of mitigate all of the aggro that they're receiving. Okay, so the Recluse is the most complicated character to explain. They also even have a passive ability, just like the other characters do, but I don't really know what the Recluse's does. I think it regenerates mana somehow. Anyway, let's talk about the next character, Wilder, who is very much a jack of all trades. Wilder's hookshot ability is on a very short cooldown, and you'll find yourself using it a lot. On small enemies, it pulls them towards you, and on larger enemies, it pulls you towards them. One thing worth noting is it's easy to chain the hookshot into different attacks, like you can see here. The hookshot can also be aimed manually, hitting the terrain and launching you forward. Now, Wilder's ultimate also uses his left arm. The grappling hook opens up for an explosive blast. This blast can be charged, it can be comboed with your running animation and the hookshot animation, and it stuns enemies. In this case, it actually staggered the enemy, allowing for a critical hit, but on every single enemy and boss I used it against, it also stunned them for a short amount of time, which was this unique animation that allowed my teammates to sort of get a moment to breathe or do extra damage. Wilder's passive ability is a one-time use effect that allows him to completely negate any instant of damage that would have killed him. You might have just seen it activate there. Basically, Wilder does this brief moment of inspired acrobatics and gets a second chance instead of being downed. Next, let's talk about the Guardian. So the Guardian's passive ability is this shield stance, I'm pretty sure, which increases your guarding capabilities at the expense of your movement. Their ability is this whirlwind attack, which seems to get rid of environmental effects like the Death Blight here, but moreover, its main function is to interrupt enemies, so that your teammates can get some damage in. In this way, the Guardian is a really strong melee support character, acting as a tank, but also as a tank sort of support for other characters around you. Their ultimate too is very team-based, with this aerial dive bomb that is excellent for reviving your teammates, because remember, you have to attack your teammates to revive them. This has a secondary effect, I'm pretty sure, of fortifying the teammates that are near the area of effect, giving them increased poise for a short time. I make it sound like the Guardian is purely a support character, but that dive bomb will be excellent for clearing groups of small enemies as well, and accumulating runes from killing enemies and strengthening all of your characters and leveling up is a huge part of the game, so that kind of group clearing is a really good offensive capability as well. And speaking of offensive capabilities, this is the Duchess, who was the character that I played the most in this demo. Her passive is this sidestep dodge that's similar to the Bloodborne dodge, making her very well suited for anyone who prefers a more aggressive playstyle. Her ability recharges extremely fast, like you can use it every 10 seconds or so, and it's a sort of stopwatch themed ability which takes into account the last few seconds of damage that that enemy has taken and duplicates it. This effect is shown by a white spirit that appears and sort of shows the damage that is being duplicated. Because you're so aggressive, the Duchess naturally gets a lot of aggro, but this is offset by her dodge, but also by her ultimate, which is a cloaking spell that cloaks you and your nearby allies, making you way less likely to get aggro and just enabling a few different things within the context of the game. For example, you can use it before a fight to get the jump on enemies, you can use it in the middle of the fight to disengage from enemies, or something that's especially good is using it to safely resurrect your teammates once they get downed. So, when you die in this game, you fall to the ground, you crawl extremely slowly, and a little circle appears above your head. This little circle is basically like a health bar that your teammates have to attack and deplete in order to resurrect you. The first time you're downed, you only have one of these purple bars, the second time you have two, and the third time you have three, meaning that every subsequent time you die, it's more risky for your teammates to try and resurrect you because they have to stand there hitting you while avoiding aggro for quite a long time. And with some of these bosses, avoiding aggro is not easy. These bosses will often be a 3-part fight where you just have them on you the entire time, so resurrecting your teammates is definitely a tricky thing to pull off sometimes. It's also something that takes the damage you deal into account, so the more damage you do, the faster you'll resurrect your teammates, and so now I think we should talk about how to make your character stronger, how to make you do more damage and take more damage and survive. Okay, so the footage they gave us is really quite good. It does a good job of showcasing things that are important to the game. But RP walking like this is not one of them. If you did this in game, your teammates will scream at you like, you don't have time to do this kind of thing. You are evaluating weapons and items and stats as fast as you can because you also have to think about where to go next, and yeah, it's just crazy. So a big part of skill expression is being able to look at a weapon and saying, okay, this suits my build, okay, I'm going to work towards this, or I'm going to leave this one behind, or I'm going to give this one to a teammate, that sort of thing. And a part of what makes this so much simpler than Elden Ring, but also so much more complex, is that, yes, weapons have been simplified in the sense that they have one number associated with the damage they do, and it's quite clear if they inflict a status effect like Scarlet Rot. It's obvious if you've played the base game which skill is tied to the weapon, but what makes this so much more complex is that every single piece of equipment now comes with passive buffs that affect your character even if the weapon isn't actually in your hand. So you have 6 weapon slots in this game, and you want to fill every single one of them because every weapon will confer a different passive buff that will affect the main weapon that you have in your hand. So say, for example, these 3 armaments drop for you. Which ones would you take with you? If you're playing a melee character, the Tree Spear might be great because it actually has a really good charge attack and it increases the damage that charge attacks do, so you might want to base your build more around a charge attack playstyle. Or if you have the Duchess on your team, you might want to grab the Bleed weapon because Bleed seems to synergize really well with the stopwatch ability that duplicates damage. Being able to spot these synergies in an instant and try to make your build on the fly was a really big part of what made this game so fun to me. You should also be evaluating consumables because you can only carry 4 stacks of any one consumable at any one time, and consumables are really good now. Firebombs are now handheld nukes that can be thrown in midair, and weapon buffs can be applied to any weapon, and they're powerful, so bear that in mind. Another thing that's really important is, ideally, you'll have someone on your team who's really good at quickly evaluating where it will be best to go next. There are a lot of important landmarks in this game, and many of them will be recognizable across multiple sessions. For example, you see that black rise off to the right there? So if you solve the puzzle and make your way to the top, you'll get a choice of 3 armaments and or buffs to choose from, which usually is a reward that's exclusive to when you kill bosses in this game. So basically every landmark has a boss within it, but some have interesting things as well, like we're currently diving down to Kenneth Heights Castle, which showed up a few times for us in our run, and inside this room there was a map on the table, and when you interact with the map, it actually reveals points of interest that usually wouldn't be marked on the map. For example, the locations of these silver scarab beetles would show up, and whenever we defeated one of these, a talisman would drop. Each character has 2 talisman slots, and being able to loot a talisman usually was a really big power spike for one member of our team. And I don't have footage of it, but Kenneth Heights map also revealed the location of merchants on the map, and these merchants were always next to a smithing table, and they always sold one type of smithing stone, which would have allowed you to level up your weapon. This is probably a really important mechanic to interact with if you find a merchant, because weapons have different rarities as well, which is something I should have mentioned. There's a common level 1 rarity, there's a rare blue level 3 rarity, there's an epic purple level 9 rarity, and we only found 2 of these, but there is a legendary rarity as well that requires you to be level 12 to equip it. I'll admit there were runs where I was like, man, we didn't get any good loot that run, like we didn't find that many epics or legendaries, and that could be a bit frustrating. However, I suspect that the merchants and their smithing tables will be a way to consistently upgrade a weapon that might be common, but it might have a really good buff that you want, and so I think upgrading weapons could be a way to sort of smooth out the randomness of the game. At the end of every day, you face a major boss, so there were 4 different types we could face in this demo, and they were all very difficult, especially the ones that split into multiple versions of themselves or had multiple ads that you had to deal with, because that required everyone in your team to fulfill a role, and the strategy you use against these bosses will play a huge part in your success. For example, we had someone on our team who was not as familiar with Elden Ring, so they ended up taking on a tanking role where they kind of held up their shield and tried their best to keep aggro rather than dealing damage, and they did a great job of that. That worked really well because they could do something like distract the demi-human queen all by themselves, while me and a more competent player were able to DPS this demi-human swordsman down and then go back and help the tank with the one they were aggroing. There were strategies for every boss like this, and I really enjoyed coming up with ways to defeat these bosses on the fly and accounting for the things that went wrong within the fight. So what you're seeing here is the end of day 1, where they've defeated the major boss and now they get to claim a reward. Like many rewards in this game, it's a choice between 3 different options. Sometimes it was a choice between permanent effects and buffs for your character, sometimes weapons, sometimes both, and again you have to make a really split-second decision on what is best for you and your team. And then at the end of the day, the Nightreign recedes, and you can go out and explore again, but bear in mind, I'm pretty sure everything you killed on day 1 stays dead on day 2, so it was important to keep progressing around the map and finding new places to explore. Eventually, everything culminates in this, your final fight against the chosen Night Lord that you set out to face when you left the Round Table Hold. In this case, our final boss was called Tricephalus, a 3-headed hound that periodically would split into 3 parts, 1 for each member of your group. It's in this boss fight and boss fights like this that you realize Nightreign really was designed for 3 people. Yes, they probably could have designed enemies so that they scaled with the amount of people in your party, but there's something to be said for not compromising on your boss design around that fact. You know, these bosses feel like they were designed to be taken on with 3 people, and everyone in your party is supposed to have a different role in these fights as a result. So, that's Nightreign. I mean, I could go on about all the different little things I've discovered, but I don't have footage for it right now, so I think I'll just give you my thoughts on the game. Obviously, somewhat biased, I run a From Software YouTube channel, you have to take what I say with a grain of salt, but I really did have so much fun playing this. In retrospect, I was a bit wrong about my analysis of the game previously, because previously a big point I mentioned was that, you know, Nightreign will allow you to get immersed in this ever-changing world and take in the scenery and just enjoy like a first playthrough of Elden Ring again. This isn't that. Like, you don't have time to appreciate this world sometimes. Instead, that feeling is replaced with this rush to explore and get stronger and overcome difficulty, and when your build comes together just right and that allows you to kill even more bosses even faster and get even stronger, it's a great feeling. And over the course of our play session, you know, We finally had one run where everything came together perfectly. We got the items we wanted, we managed to execute our strategies perfectly, and we finally faced off against the final boss and managed to take it down. If you have a friend or two who are into Elden Ring as well, and you think you can all team up and take on this game together, I think it's going to be like one of the best co-op experiences you've ever had. My main concerns with this game come from the fact that, if you don't have someone else to play this with, will this game still be great played with randoms or played by yourself? I'm not as sure of that, and I think come the network test in a couple of days, people aren't going to have that many friends to play with who also got into the network test, and so I think some of the feedback might be more negative because of that. But as it stands, everyone I know had a blast playing this together, especially side by side in the same room with other people. It was just an unforgettable experience. The other thing I'm curious about is, when the full game releases, how random will the maps be? In this demo build of the game, again, we could only play one of two maps, but we've kind of been led to believe that maps will be somewhat procedurally generated and that they'll stitch together different zones. And yeah, the demo had two maps seemingly that you could explore, and over the course of our session and over the course of the network test, when people play this, they're going to start figuring out these maps and understanding the best route through, and it will become familiar to them, which I don't think is the intended experience for Nightreign. I suspect in the full game, and I hope in the full game, maps are really, really randomized, and no two playthroughs are the same, so that's definitely something I'm going to be looking for in the full release. Anyway, I hope this video helped you understand more about the game. I'll be playing the network test and recording our experiences, and I might make a video on that as well, so subscribe, stay tuned. Thank you to Bandai for flying me out and giving me this experience, and thank you for watching.